Teenspeak gathered questions from teenagers who've had experience of domestic abuse and asked them to the people who have power to make a difference. Here's what they had to say. Do you think children and young people should be taught about domestic abuse and healthy relationships at school?
Absolutely, I do. The question is, from what age? And I would go earlier and earlier and earlier.
Children and young people definitely need to be taught at school and elsewhere in youth clubs and in health settings about what healthy relationships look like. Because how can you safeguard yourself if you've not learned what it means to be safe and nurtured and loved rather than abused or taken for granted?
Absolutely, and the earlier the better. I think children need to be taught, they need to understand what an unhealthy relationship is like, what unacceptable and abusive behaviour looks like, but they also need to understand what a healthy relationship looks like too. And I think, again, from a very early age, we need to be telling our children, talking to our children about gender equality, about empowerment, and about respecting themselves, and very importantly too, respecting others.
And what age do you think children should be taught this?
We think, right across the Office of the Children's Commissioner, that the younger you start, the more comfortable children will be with discussing really quite difficult subjects about how you respect each other as human beings and what a really strong relationship looks like, that isn't abusive and isn't violent. So we think, right the way back into primary schools, as long as it's done sensitively.
I believe very strongly that children at school from an early age should be taught about the significance of personal relationships and the dangers of domestic abuse and domestic violence.
I think we might want to work with schools and education about the right age and what we would teach children at different ages. So, for example, with very young children, we may not be speaking about domestic abuse because we could scare them, but we could be talking about acceptable behaviour and safety. And as they get older, when children reach teenage years, it's really important that I think there's clarity for them about relationships, what's healthy in relationships, what's acceptable, what's not.
Can young people talk to any teacher at school about domestic abuse that may be happening at home, or is it only one or two teachers at school that they can talk to?
I would say that certainly young people could talk to anybody that they wanted to. I think in reality, teenagers or children are probably going to pick out the member of staff who they've got the best rapport with, or it could be their head of year or the head of sixth form, or they're going to go and talk to a teacher that they have quite a good relationship with and that they know and they feel confident with, and that's totally okay. That's a good thing. It's as it should be. What the NUT is keen to ensure is that we want staff to know what to do then, where to go, and if they want to discuss it with somebody else, that they can go and do that. We always remind our teacher members to be careful not to promise confidentiality, because sometimes young people might think they're having a private and a confidential conversation, and it might be that the teacher does need to go and discuss it with somebody else to make sure that the young person's safe.
If two students at the same school were going out with each other and one of them was being abusive to the other, can the school do anything?
So the school would need to treat it very seriously, and they would need to talk to both young people, but they would particularly need to listen and support the person who was saying, I'm in an abusive and harmful relationship. And it might be that the young person doesn't quite realise that it's harmful and negative. It can be really hard to understand what's happening to you and to understand what it is you want to do, or what it is exactly that you feel about the relationship that you're in. So the school absolutely can do things for those two individual teenagers, but again, we would say that it's not just about the individuals. We would want to see the school doing preventative work with young people in different classes, so that there's all kinds of opportunities for the kids to talk about, well, what's a healthy relationship and what does that look like, and what's power and control, and is it fun if your boyfriend doesn't want you to go out and doesn't want you to do things? Is that flattering and is that quite exciting, or actually is that negative if somebody else is trying to control you? And we would want to help young people, and young women in particular, realise that if somebody's trying to control you, actually that's not a good thing. It's not flattering. It's a very worrying sign.
What if a student was going out with someone who is not in the same school or is older and doesn't go to school? Can a student still talk to a teacher about it?
Yes, a student can talk to a teacher about it. So a teacher would be very happy to have a conversation with a student if they're worried about issues they've got because they're seeing a boy in the school, or if they're seeing a boy who isn't in the school, or if they're seeing a boy who's older, the teachers would want the students to feel able to come and talk about it. There's all kinds of ways now that we know that young people might be in situations where they think, I'm not quite sure what to do about this. There could be texting that's worrying them, somebody could be stalking them, or they could be worried about a friend. We know that for lots of girls they're sometimes worried about something that's happening to a friend of theirs. And again, you could go to a teacher and say, I'm worried about what's happening to my friend. I think she's in a harmful relationship with an older boy or an older man, and there are things that the teachers can do then to help support the girl and the girl that the other friend's worried about. So absolutely, those are the kind of conversations that it's right and appropriate to have in schools.
Young people are afraid that if they tell one teacher about domestic violence at home or in their own relationships, every teacher will then know about it and they think badly of them.
I think I can completely understand why young people think it's a difficult thing to talk about. There's lots of very understandable concerns. People often feel very protective about their family, protective about their mum or about their dad. They're worried about what might happen. There's lots of worries and concerns that people might have that make it hard to talk about it. But I'm fairly confident that I think teachers handle this very well, and although we do need to give teachers more encouragement so that we make this more of an issue that gets spoken about regularly, still I think it would be very unlikely that young people would need to worry about that kind of gossip or things happening that would make the student not want to discuss it.